There's a specific type of person this video is about. You probably already know if you're one of them. You've heard the advice. Keep the dog off the bed, sleep hygiene, boundaries. You heard it, maybe tried it once, and then somewhere around midnight you looked at the dog on the floor and felt something you couldn't name and quietly patted the mattress. And the dog jumped up. And something in you settled that hadn't been settled all day. Psychologists have been studying that moment. They're finding a coherent psychological profile, a specific pattern of traits, attachment styles, and neurological responses that cluster together in people who sleep with their dogs in ways that are, and this is the part that surprised the researchers, largely adaptive. In other words, the thing you do that you've been quietly told is a little embarrassing, the sleep experts got this one wrong. And the data is why. Here's what your nervous system is actually doing while you sleep. In October 2024, researchers at the University of Jyväskylä in Finland published a study in Scientific Reports measuring heart rate variability in 30 bonded dog-owner pairs during multiple conditions, including rest. Heart rate variability matters because it reveals not just how fast your heart beats, but how flexibly your nervous system responds to its environment. High variability means your system is regulated, resourced, capable of recovery. Low variability means your stress response is running quietly in the background, burning fuel you need for sleep. What lead researcher Aija Koskela and her team found was that bonded pairs showed synchronized autonomic patterns during rest. The dog's nervous system and the owner's nervous system were tracking each other. The researchers described this as emotional and physiological co-modulation, a partial synchronization of internal state between two different species mediated by the bond between them. They measured the same variables in dogs and unfamiliar humans. No synchronization. This mechanism only activates within established bonds. It isn't a dog thing, it's a your dog thing. When you sleep beside your dog, your nervous system isn't just receiving comfort passively, it's outsourcing part of its threat monitoring function to an animal whose sensory range vastly exceeds yours. Your dog's hearing extends to 65,000 hertz. Their olfactory processing operates on a scale your brain cannot access. They are monitoring your environment on frequencies you don't have. Your nervous system knows this. Not consciously, but at the level that actually governs sleep, the autonomic level, below thought. Your brain registers the dog as an extension of its own security apparatus. This is why you fall asleep faster when they're there. Not because you decided to feel safe, because your nervous system made that assessment without asking you. Now here's where the story gets much older. Dogs are the only animal domesticated before agriculture. Before cities, before farming, before written language, there were humans and dogs sleeping together in the dark. Geneticists studying canine domestication have found that domestic dogs carry unique insertions on chromosome 6, in a region associated with hypersociability and human-directed contact seeking that simply don't exist in wolves. These are not behavioral adaptations that appeared through training. They are genomic. Your dog was shaped at the level of DNA, over 15,000 years of coevolution, to seek proximity with you, to read your face, to regulate toward your presence. Which means the neurochemical response you feel when your dog is close isn't incidental. It's the output of a biological system that was specifically built to produce it. In 2015, researcher Miho Nagasawa and colleagues at Azabu University in Japan published findings in Science showing that mutual gazing between a dog and their owner triggers simultaneous increases in urinary oxytocin in both. Subsequent commentaries on this study raised legitimate methodological questions, particularly around the wolf comparison group size and the role of owner sex in the oxytocin response. This is how science actually works. The finding is real and significant. The mechanism is still being refined. What isn't in dispute, because it has been replicated across multiple independent studies, is that physical contact with a bonded dog produces measurable drops in cortisol, your primary stress hormone, in both parties. Consider what 8 hours of that contact does. Here's the paradox that should have ended the sleep hygiene debate. and didn't. In 2017, sleep medicine specialist Dr. Lois Cron at the Mayo Clinic published a study in Mayo Clinic Proceedings tracking the sleep of 40 healthy adults and their dogs over 7 nights using clinical-grade actigraphy on both species. The objective finding? Having a dog in the bedroom maintained satisfactory sleep efficiency for most participants. Having the dog on the bed rather than in the room was associated with reduced sleep efficiency by the numbers. And yet, most participants reported feeling more rested, more secure, and more comfortable when their dog was present. In an earlier, related study drawing on 150 consecutive sleep clinic patients, 41% described their pets as unobtrusive or beneficial to sleep. Only 20% described them as disruptive. Researcher Christy Hoffman at Canisius College used activity trackers to investigate the gap. She found that owners were 3 times more likely to transition from inactive to active states when their dog moved, but recalled their dog disturbing their sleep on only 22 of 124 nights studied. Her conclusion? Dogs may be fulfilling a psychological need for safety that overrides the measurable physiological cost. The disruptions were real, the felt safety was stronger. The sleep hygiene framework treats sleep quality as a function of uninterrupted silence and darkness. But that model is missing something foundational. Restorative sleep is primarily a function of nervous system state, of whether your brain has assessed the environment as safe enough to fully let go. For the overwhelming majority of human evolutionary history, that assessment was made through the presence of trusted companions. The isolated solo bedroom, one person, silence, no other warm bodies, is a historically recent invention. Communal sleep, with its sounds and movements and shared warmth, was the baseline for 100,000 years. The sleep hygiene industry isn't wrong that dogs disrupt sleep by their metrics. Their metrics are too small for what sleep actually is. Now we need to talk about the cost. Research on human-animal attachment is consistent on one finding. The strength of the bond predicts the intensity of grief when the animal dies. A 2023 study published in Death Studies, examining 496 bereaved pet owners, found that attachment anxiety, the intensity with which people feel and fear the loss of close bonds, was a significant predictor of grief severity after companion animal death. A broader analysis published in 2025 found that approximately 30% of pet owners experience intense grief following pet loss, with responses sometimes comparable in severity to the loss of a human family member. The bed becomes the loudest place. The same neurochemical and autonomic dynamics that made sleep feel safe now run with nothing on the other end. The co-regulation your nervous system relied on, without ever consciously knowing it relied on it, is simply absent. And nervous systems don't process that as emotional loss only. They process it as environmental threat, as a place that used to mean safety and doesn't anymore. People who haven't co-slept with their dogs sometimes don't understand why the grief is so physical, why it hits hardest at night, why the bedroom specifically becomes unbearable in a way that's hard to explain. Now you understand the mechanism. You weren't just sharing a bed, you were sharing a nervous system. And grief, at that level, isn't sentiment, it's withdrawal. It's what happens when a regulatory system your body depended on is no longer there. The people who grieve hardest for their dogs aren't loving too much. They're the ones who are paying attention. Which brings us back to the person this video is about. You heard the advice. You tried the floor. You patted the mattress anyway. That decision, made at midnight, below the level of reasoning, in response to something your nervous system understood before your conscious mind did, was not a failure of discipline. It was your biology being more honest than the advice. An animal shaped across 15,000 years of co-evolution to bond with you, to synchronize its nervous system with yours during the hours you are most vulnerable, to monitor your environment on frequencies you can't access, to make your brain feel, below the level of thought, that the night is safe. The sleep experts told you to keep the dog off the bed. Their metrics were too small for what was actually happening. If this landed somewhere real for you, about your dog or about yourself, drop a comment below. And if you want content that takes human behavior seriously, the science, the cost, and the parts that don't resolve cleanly, subscribe. We don't make videos about what's comfortable to know. We make videos about what's true.